Roller coasters look dangerous, but they're safer than the trip to the park. So why do they look so scary? Well, behind the scenes there are so many safety systems in place because even if something goes wrong, they're designed to keep you safe. Right, first up, let's deal with the biggest fear, and that is either falling out of that ride or hitting something on the way round. And trust me, that's not going to happen. For starters, all these rides have restraints, and whether it is just a simple seatbelt, a lap bar, or an over-the-shoulder restraint, they are always designed to keep you in place. Some of them will have that kind of click-in ratchet system where they can only go to certain positions, and more modern ones use hydraulic restraints where you can put it to exactly where you want and it'll lock in place. There's usually a backup on these and they cannot be released whilst the ride is operating. In fact, if it ever stops halfway out on the track, they need to come around with a power pack to unlock these, so there's no chance you're coming out. And then there's the fear of the train actually leaving the track itself. Well, that's not going to happen because modern coasters have 3 sets of wheels. You have the run wheels on top, which just tell you where you're going. You have the upstop wheels, which, as the name suggests, they stop you from going up and keep you pinned to that track. And then you have some side wheels, which are called the guide wheels, to help go around the corners. So basically, you are clamped onto this track and that train is not going anywhere. The other thing that you might be concerned about is whacking something with your arms. Now on older coasters that may still be a thing because if you've ever seen these old coasters, they always say keep your hands inside the vehicle, and you probably know why, because there's not much of a clearance envelope. Modern coasters on the other hand, if you ever see them testing, they've got this big device that attaches to the train and they wheel it around the track to make sure that is like the furthest extreme of a tall person, so not me, can get their arms and wave around, and they make sure that it's not going to hit anything. And it's very, very rare that this needs changed, but sometimes when they're doing that testing, they will find, oops, we need to move a pillar or we need to cut some grass back or whatever it is. But you're not going to hit anything whilst you're on this ride. Right, now here's one that a lot of people may not recognise, and that is that these things have very, very complicated computer systems running them. They operate on what is known as a block system. So effectively they take the track and they split it up into sections and they monitor the position of all of the trains, and there can never be more than one train in any particular block at any given time. So you'll usually find a block will end either with a lift hill or a brake or some mechanism where they can stop a vehicle to prevent it going into the next section of the track. But basically the computer, and there are often 2 computers checking against each other, it will make sure that if the next area is blocked, then you are not allowed into it and they will just bring you to a safe halt until it clears and then you're allowed to proceed. Now, as I said there are a lot of rides that have 2 computer systems doing exactly the same job but talking to each other all the time. And if anything, even the tiniest little thing is different between those 2 computers, they shut the ride down for safety. So it doesn't matter if one thinks the train's going too fast or one didn't get a response from a sensor or whatever it is. The second that those 2 computers don't agree with each other, for safety reasons, they will just bring the ride to a controlled stop. And then on top of that, you've obviously got the ride ops themselves. Now, if you've ever paid attention when you're in the station for dispatch, on a lot of coasters these days, you will find there are multiple ride ops, typically in all 4 corners, and more often than not, 2, 3, or all 4 of those corners have a dispatch button. So they'll all sit there, they'll put the thumbs up to the ride op who's in the main cab, and quite often they have to also press a secondary button, and only when everybody's agreed, got their thumbs up and all the buttons are pressed, do the trains dispatch from the station. The ride op obviously is keeping an eye on a lot more than that. The computer system does all the clever stuff, but the ride ops will be keeping an eye on the screens, make sure somebody's not got their phone out or somebody's not panicking or doing something silly or whatever it is, and they can obviously bring the ride to a controlled stop as well. So there is that human element that backs up the computers. Right, this might sound really strange, but coasters are actually designed to stop and not go. So if anything goes wrong, these will come to a controlled stop. Now, they've got various systems that do this. One of the most obvious ones that you will no doubt have heard on a ride is the anti-rollback systems, typically when you are going up a lift hill, or sometimes when you're just cresting over a hill, you hear that clack, 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 clack. That has a little tooth underneath so that if for some reason it doesn't get to the top or something goes wrong, it cannot go backwards. So that is one mechanism to stop that thing. The other thing is the propulsion system itself. Now obviously older coasters, and actually some of the newer ones as well, are powered solely by gravity, so they have that kind of lift hill to start with and then off they go. Modern ones are starting to use a lot of magnetic propulsion, so it's LSMs and LIMs. Basically it's just a clever system of magnets that just propel that train along the track. But they're also using those magnets for brakes. Now you do get the traditional brakes where they kind of squeeze like a fin and it'll kind of bring things to a halt. They're kind of mechanically complicated and obviously lead a lot more maintenance and wear and tear and all that kind of stuff. So Nowadays, you're starting to see a lot more magnetic brakes. So take, for example, Nemesis here in the UK. The original system was those kind of traditional brakes. And nowadays, in the reborn version, it has magnetic brakes. And the way that works is kind of the opposite of the magnetic propulsion. It uses a magnetic field to slow the train down. And actually, the way that it works, because, you know, physics, the faster you hit those brakes, the harder they're going to kick in. So you'll find this on things like Stealth and other rides like that, that when you come into that brake section at the end, typically, I'm not sure if Stealth has it actually, Red Force definitely does, you come in and that is you hitting magnetic brakes. Right, now all this really works because the rides are constantly being checked. There is an army of people who keep an eye on these rides, and that comes from everything from a daily inspection, weekly inspection, monthly inspection, all the way up to their annual teardown. So every day these rides are inspected. Now, typically that will involve a track walk of some description. On older wooden coasters, that could literally be walking the entire track, looking for nails sticking up or anything that's broken. On modern coasters, it's not so easy to walk the track, but you can at least walk around the track and kind of look up and observe what is going on and look for any problems. Then the other thing is there is that maintenance schedule. So depending on the park, if it's the UK parks where they seasonally close in the winter months, they will typically take all the rides apart in those couple of months, strip them right the way back to the very chassis of the train, take every bolt out, inspect everything, replace what's needed, inspect it all, put it back together, and then it has to go through a lot of test cycles. If you're talking about parks that are open all year round, so for example, I did Busch Gardens Tampa, and we did a behind the scenes, and their Cheetah Hunt, I think it ran 5 trains, something like that. One train is always in maintenance. So there's always one train that's stripped down to bits, getting kind of its annual maintenance, and then when it's fixed, it goes back on the track, another one comes off. But ultimately, each train has to go through this cycle and get kind of stripped down and inspected, bits replaced, all that kind of good stuff. So there is a lot of maintenance and inspection that goes on to these rides to make sure that they're safe for you. So here's the thing, you're probably thinking, well, if there's all these systems, then how do accidents ever happen? No system is perfect, and there is obviously the element of human error. So, for example, one very well-known incident was the Smiler here in the UK. Now, I'm not going to go into super details on this one, but ultimately there was a mistake made where the wrong number of trains were on the track. Nobody communicated this to the engineers. They counted what they thought was all the trains, and they overrode the system and said, it's fine, on you go. It wasn't fine, and the system did exactly what it was designed to do and brought things to a halt because it knew something was wrong. Now, incidents like that have massively changed the industry. All sorts of standards have changed. There are a lot more kind of layers in place now. So that's where you get these things like multiple people needing to check things to release a train, etc. I know from a engineer's point of view, there used to be a lot more that they could do on site, so they could just go to the cab and just override things and job done. Nowadays, a lot of these rides, you have to go out to where the fault is and clear it in situ. So it forces you to physically go to the problem, which means if there is genuinely a problem, you're going to see it. You're not going to go, oh, it's just telling porcupines. There's also now a lot more CCTV, etc. So the systems have improved significantly, and it is obviously not great that these sort of incidents happen and then lead to these progressions, but the point is, things are significantly safer now than they have ever been. So the next time you're on a roller coaster and you feel like it is out of control, just remember there are a multitude of systems working behind the scenes to make sure that you are safe. Roller coasters look dangerous, but they're more safe than the... Even if something goes wrong, that's still not right. They have what's called upstop wheels, which kind of, as they would suggest... Oh man, I can't talk.